After exposing the shocking decisions made by Keir Starmer's CPS on the Rochdale grooming case, I had to speak to the victims who were harmed.
The initial rape started from that, innit? Because they started taking us into different rooms. So many men. There was like 20 men in like one room, like all sat in a circle, and we was just sat in the middle.
What they said was horrifying beyond belief.
They threatened us with a gun.
A gun?
Yeah, and they was like, we'll shoot you, we'll kill you.
Ruby, the survivor of the Rochdale grooming gang, is ready to tell her uncensored, never-before-heard version of events.
And how can he stand there and say, okay, we did a good job? You didn't do a good job though, did you?
My record was going after where I thought something had gone wrong and putting it right.
Do you think we can trust him on any decision?
No, I don't. I can't trust that man.
Last time on the Express Report, we learned how Keir Starmer claimed in Parliament to have overseen the first grooming gang's prosecution in Rochdale.
I oversaw the first grooming gang prosecution, which was in Rochdale more than a decade ago.
We also learned how this meant he was connecting himself to the decision to present a victim called Amber as a paedophile and failing to charge a man with rape who'd impregnated the girl's 13-year-old sister, Ruby. Well, Ruby has agreed to speak to us and finally set the record straight about a case that has been used by the Prime Minister to bolster his reputation.
Like, I was 12 when we first started going out.
And what did going out, what was it, just going out and getting food with your mates?
Yeah, so like, we'd smoke, me and my friend, she weren't allowed and I weren't allowed, so it was like, oh, we're naughty, whatever. And then we'd smoke and then, obviously I didn't live in Haywood, so I'd go home, so I'd stay there on the weekends and I'd only see her like 2-3 days. And then I'd have to go home on a Sunday, like, and then obviously I didn't know what she was doing Monday to Friday. I mean, we was kids, we never really asked.
Yeah.
And then one Friday she said, oh, let's go down here. Like I went here the other day with another girl. We didn't end up going that night. I don't know what, for whatever reason, but that night we didn't go. So the next night, that day we was bored. And she was like, come on, let's just go down, let's just go see. So we went down to the takeaway and we walked in. And they didn't really know her, but they've seen her, of her. Come back on Monday and we'll have drinks and that. And obviously I had school, so I couldn't, because I went back home on the Sunday night. So then it was like the week after, then we was like, weekend, we was like, oh, we'll go down and see.
Not a lot of people realise that the epicentre of the Rochdale grooming gang scandal was not in fact Rochdale, but Haywood, a small town on the outskirts. It was here that the businesses linked to the child abuse ring were based. Ruby was especially vulnerable because she used to stay in Haywood with a recently bereaved relative and was often left unsupervised.
What did you think about someone giving you free? I mean, because it must be quite exciting if you're a kid.
Yeah, so when we first went in, at first, like, it was really awkward, because, like, what do you mean you're giving us free food? Like, why? So when you first went in, it was like, oh, it was so weird, like, dead awkward. And we also stood there, I'd never met these people before in my life, so I was like, okay. So once we initially met them that night, and then we went back the weekend after, when I come back to Haywood, we went back down the weekend after, it was like the Friday night, and he was like, oh, do you want some drinks? Do you use drinks? And I was like, well, yeah. And he was like, oh, well, why don't you go round the back and then come up the stairs? So we did. And like, they was like giving us all like nicknames for themselves. So like, there was a guy there and he was like, and my name's Spike. And then the daddy was there and he was like, my name's Daddy. And then, so then we got drunk and then they took us home. And then the next day, because obviously there was no hangovers it's really important because that first day when we went, they did give us fags, but they give us mixer. So they give us vodka and they give us Coke to mix with the vodka. But then the next day on the Saturday when we went, they didn't give us mixer. They give us vodka, they give us fags, they give us food, but no mixer.
Wait, so in a matter of days, you've gone from, I'll pop round here for just a bit of free food,
Yeah.
to they're giving you drinks.
Yeah, and getting really drunk in the back with music on.
Right.
Daddy'd normally follow us up and bring us drinks and that, but that day the vodka and everything was already in the room. Bearing in mind, he wasn't giving us mixer. So imagine two 12-year-old girls drinking vodka straight, a litre, between us. and we was polishing the bottle. So like there was nothing left in the bottle. So we went in this other room because there was like rooms with just like mattresses on the floor. They said, go in this room today, start drinking, and then we'll move you into that. So when come back in the other room, that's when all the men was there. And it weren't just like one man, it was like so many men. Like, there was like 20 men in like one room, like all sat in a circle, and we was just sat in the middle. And there was like talking and just saying like, oh, my name is this, and my name is this, and my name is this.
It's important to understand the scale of the sexual abuse network that Ruby is describing here. So in 2012, the first prosecutions came as a result of Operation Span. 9 men were put behind bars, including the so-called ringleader, Shabir Ahmed, known as Daddy. During the process of that investigation, the police came across a 15-year-old victim who they built a separate case around, known as Operation Routh. That led to 16 men being prosecuted, although due to reporting restrictions, we are only able to name 5 of them. As more victims felt empowered to come forward after the first set of convictions, the police launched Operation Doublet to investigate further claims of abuse. This resulted in 19 further convictions. But by 2025, it was clear that these investigations still weren't comprehensive enough. So Greater Manchester Police launched Operation Lytton. This was a massive retrospective investigation going all the way back to 2001 to 2006 that was aiming to convict all the suspects that had been missed by the earlier cases. So far, 12 men have been convicted, but 20 other men have been charged and are awaiting trial. The crazy thing about all these convictions is they still don't cover everything that survivors say needs to be done.
Were these nicknames as well?
Yeah, so like Tariq, he got arrested and charged. I can't even remember, there was so many men there, there was like, but bearing in mind, underneath us was a fully functioning takeaway. It was open, there was customers, so you couldn't, sometimes they'd say, oh, be quiet, there's a lot of people in, and stuff like that, like, they can hear you from downstairs, so you have to be a bit quieter, or we'll close these doors, like that. So when we've gone in, and there's all these men, and they're all speaking their own language, and we're clueless, we just sat there. Also, that's when the initial rape started from that, innit? Because they started taking us into different rooms, and was like, oh, come in here, we just need to talk to you. Obviously, we've been going for 2 weeks, so we didn't have a clue what was going on in that. And we had no clue on what was going on. So when they went into the rooms, they'd be like, oh, we're going to have sex. And I was like, you're going to have sex? And then I was like, oh no, I was like, don't hurt my friend, because she's poorly, like, don't hurt my friend. But little did I already know that they was already doing what they was doing to me in the other room with her. And it became like a taboo subject between our friendship group. So like, we all knew what was happening and what was going to happen, but it was like taboo. Like we never spoke of it. We'd say, oh, we'll go here and we'll go back. But we never spoke of what happened in the rooms.
Because, I mean, you're 2 12-year-old girls being isolated from each other in a house full of men who speak another language, so automatically it's like they're whispering to each other.
Yeah, so when that vodka finished, so we kind of became immune to vodka at one point, so like, a litre wouldn't really get us on the level they wanted us to get on, so they would like say, okay, we'll buy 2 litres, you can have a litre each. But again, there was no mixer, we was sat in a takeaway, there's coke downstairs, and when we'd ask, they'd say, no, just make sure you eat before you drink. That's what they used to say. So they used to bring us food, then go out to the shop or wherever they got the vodka from, bring the vodka up. And they started buying like a bottle of vodka each, and we'd drink that. And then they'd do the same with like the cigarettes. Like they'd buy us 20 fags each. Like it was just like it just went from there. And then after that whole ordeal, so when we went into the room with the first man, and that happened, it was like, it like sobered you up, like, but like not sobered you up. So like after each rape, like you could drink more. So you'd come out of the room and we'd both like look at each other and we'd be like, let's just get pissed. I block it. So then we just drink and drink and drink. And then one night, the daddy said that, oh, we're going to go to another house because we've got an inspection in the takeaway. Somebody's coming to inspect the takeaway. So we're going to go to a house. So we went to a house, and again, there was like so many men there, but the vodka was already there. They didn't go buy it, it was already there. They
were waiting for you.
Yeah, so like it was like planned. So the vodka was already there. And then on the way there, he gave us some vodka in the car. He was like, drink that before we get there. And then when we went in, there was like loads of men there. And they're like, oh, have you got a phone? So we was like, yeah, we've got phones. Like, oh, give me your number. So we was like, oh, okay. And we was like giving them, because we were scared, because obviously we was in a town we didn't even know as well. I think we was far, it was like Nelson. Like we was far away from Haywood. And he was like, oh, give me your number. So I was like, okay. So in the end, I was just like, my phone was just getting passed, and then her phone was just getting passed. And that's when the phone started ringing, like constantly, like every day the phone would be belling out.
And so it was you and your friend. How many other girls do you remember seeing that were also in a similar situation?
I'd say there was about, of what I'd seen, about 25. What I seen, but I know now there was a lot more. what it was happening to her, and then they never said. Because when the three girls come out on the TV, one of my mum's friends turned around and was like, oh, the three girls, I've watched the three girls, and then she started crying, and my mum was like, why are you crying? She was like, it happened to me, but she's my mum's age.
Wow.
And it was like, what the hell? Like that happened to her, and she's my mum's age, you know? So it's like, it's been going for so many years. That's mental, because you can't tell me nobody knew, because everybody knew.
And you said that they wanted you to get a certain amount of drunk?
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, so they'd want you so you couldn't stand.
Right.
So they'd make you blackout drunk, so like you was that drunk that you couldn't remember. Yeah. Basically, you're overdosing on alcohol. If you get blackout drunk and you can't remember, that's an overdose on alcohol.
What would happen if you didn't do what they said?
Oh, they used to make threats, and they used to because they knew where my uncle lived. They knew where my mum lived. They knew what school I went to, because they was picking me up from school.
There's a special needs?
Yeah, special needs school. They'd come outside the school and pick me up.
And was that just that it would be like it was a taxi waiting? Yeah. That's how they would pretend?
Yeah.
Right.
And the school knew. I sat there countless days telling the school this was happening. These men are getting me drunk. I'm getting raped. We're having sex. We're drinking. We're smoking. And like, They didn't care.
What did they say?
Oh, right, did you have a good night? Oh, like, tell me about your night. What do you mean?
Are these your teachers?
These are my teachers. And I was going to the sexual health clinics. That was all like, that was weird, because like, we'd go in there and they'd be like, oh, we've got new flavour condoms for you to try. Hello? What do you mean?
Wait, just to step back. So you're saying it to your teachers. How do you end up going to the sexual health centre for the first place?
So basically, one of my other friends said, because we had a woman come into the school and do like a sex talk, yeah. And she was like, oh, the drop-in clinics, you can come and get free condoms, get free contraception, whatever. So me and my other friends was like, oh, we'll go down, we'll get some. But then it turned into something like a lot sinister, because we'd go down and it was like they were promoting sex. It was like they'd say, well, because you're going out tonight, why don't you try this new flavour?
These are the workers.
Yeah, and it was like, I would never turn around to a 12, 13-year-old girl and be like, okay, you're allowed to have sex, but here's practice safe sex. What? Like, I was getting raped. These men didn't care about using a condom, not using a condom. They didn't. Do you know what I mean? So we'd take them anyway. Some of them would use them, but most of them, they wouldn't.
The failures Ruby describes are not unique to Rochdale. In pretty much all the grooming gang cases, council-funded organisations, from schools to social services, failed to act on overwhelming evidence of abuse. The real question is, what was stopping them? Well, there are a few obvious answers the local authority was able to generate itself. This serious case review into the scandal was heavily criticised by the families of the victims and the local MP at the moment it was released for being a whitewash. Later work from Baroness Casey that drew on the evidence from the Rochdale scandal has suggested that fears of racism could have been a factor in the horrific failures. But the honest truth is that those responsible for letting down Ruby and the other victims have never been held to account in a public forum. The previous inquiry didn't examine Rochdale, and we don't know if the new public inquiry will either.
Were you scared every day?
Yeah, so like sometimes I was like with my friends and then they'd see me and they'd ring me and be like, oh, what are you doing there? And they'd be like, oh, I'm just walking to town or walking wherever. And they'd be like, I'm turning round, get in my car. And I'd be like, no, I'm going out like with my friends, I'm meeting my friends. No, get in the car. And they'd come back and they'd stop and be like, get the car. If you don't get in the car, I'll go to your mum's house. So we got in the car, then it'd be like, they'd take me to Haywood, we'd pick somebody else up, then we'd go to wherever they wanted to take us.
Did they ever threaten you with weapons?
Yeah, so one night they threatened us with a gun.
A gun?
Yeah, and they was like, we'll shoot you, we'll kill you.
Did they get the...
Yeah, they pulled it out in the car.
And is it because you had said no, or what happened from it?
One of the girls I'm with had an argument with him. And he was like, get the off, like, I'll kill you. And they pulled the gun out.
And how do you remember, what do you remember thinking in that moment?
I remember thinking, and then we ran. And he followed us. So we ran to where a car couldn't go, if that makes sense. And we climbed this fence and climbed into like an allotment. And we just sat in the allotment because the car can't get in the allotment. And then we hid like in sheds and all that, like we hid. And then my brother, who was in prison at the time, he had to, because the police didn't do anything, he had to get some of his criminal friends to go to a certain takeaway in Haywood and threaten the guy.
When you say the police didn't do anything, tell me what happened.
Oh, the police knew in it.
Did they ever lock you in the cars, lock you in the rooms?
Yeah, they locked us in loads of cars, they locked us in loads of rooms. But like, if you're locked in a room with you and your friend and that door's locked and there's nobody in that room, you're not scared. You're more safer in a locked room than you are out. If that door's open, you're not scared. You're more scared if that door's open than when it's locked.
I see. But I guess I meant, did they ever like imprison you?
Sometimes it weren't like a thing though. Like again, like we didn't mind being locked in a room.
Because you felt safer when you were locked there with your friend?
Yeah, I'd rather be kidnapped and locked in the room and kept in the room with vodka bags than that door be open and I get men coming in and out. So for me, it was a lot safer if the door was locked. But there was like a lot of times like it was they'd take us to like the most like new places, and that's when it was like scary because like a house we'd not been. There was a lot of houses where they had numbers and how many girls was there that day and how much it was, and like because they used to rent the apartments out and the flats, so the guy who owned the flat used to get money off the rapists for having girls around. No, so it was a list and it had so like say like Billy had, if he rented it from like 7 till 11, he'd have to pay like £300 for the room.
I see, right, so it was for use of the space for what they would do.
Yeah, then it'd say how many girls he'd had in and he'd go off how many girls he had in.
You told the school?
Told the social services. Yeah, my mum used to go mental in the case conferences saying that you're not helping my daughter when she's getting like out with these men. You're not listening to her, like she's telling you like she don't want to go to Haywood, she don't want to do this, she don't want to do that, and they was like, no, it's fine, you can go, it's mandatory, she has to go to Haywood. But there was so many sites what belonged to my school, so They could have sent me to another site, but they didn't. They deliberately sent me to the one in Heywood.
I mean, looking back now with the adults that were supposed to protect you, what do you think about them?
I just feel like if it was me now, I'm very much like, I would never allow any child to get hurt. Like, I want everybody to feel loved and okay and safe. And that was my thing. Like, if I didn't feel safe, so like we'd have like friendly men, and in our group of men, we'd have certain men what we trusted, even though they was wrong and what they did, they was wrong, and they'd take us to other men. I don't know, I can't really explain it, but they was like some people like we trusted, and we'd be like, oh, it's only somebody, and then we'd be like, it's fine, and then he'd take us and we'd get raped, and then for some unknown reason we would go back with that same man because that man didn't touch us.
They groomed you, hadn't they?
Yeah, but then that man, so would say a driver, so let's say like Billy was driving us somewhere and then Billy didn't touch us, he'd then become our safe man.
Because you're a 12-year-old child, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're
so
trying to cling on to what feels safe.
Yeah.
Oh, and so what was the deal with Billy?
Oh, he became my boyfriend when I was 12. He became my boyfriend. I didn't find out until after, but he was married and had loads of kids.
Did you tell people? How did it work?
Yeah. So everybody knew that he was my boyfriend. Like, I told everybody his age, what taxi company he worked for, his name. Like, it wasn't a secret. Nothing was a secret. I'm still very open now about everything. So, like, even then, as a child, like, nothing was taboo in my mind. So I tell them everything. Like, we was having sex. We're doing this. But then, like, now as an adult, I look back and, like, he used to take me to people's house, get me raped, and then go, oh, you're my boyfriend, you're my girlfriend. Like, it doesn't make sense. Back then, it made sense in my brain. But now it doesn't, do you know what I mean? But one of my kids ever turned around to me and said, oh, my boyfriend's 48-year-old and he's a taxi driver, I'd be like, absolutely not. Like, we were on the phone to 999, but the school didn't.
So how many people, so again, the same people we spoke about, the police, social, teachers, they all know?
They all knew.
They all knew. I told them, everybody. All right.
So the police, if you say, I'm a 12-year-old girl.
So with me, I was classed as a difficult child because of my special needs. So I was, because I wasn't the crying, sad victim they wanted, and I was angry, I was rebellious, and I tell you, like, how it was. They didn't like that. I wasn't the perfect little victim in their eyes. So for the police, they didn't really want to deal with me because if I'm telling you a story and then you just keep asking me the same question, I'm going to get mad. I won't tell you. Do you know what I mean? But there was no aftercare on my video interviews. There was nothing. The police didn't really care for it.
And then, so what happened with the pregnancy?
Well, I didn't have a period, and then my mum took me to the doctors, and they did a test there. And then my mum was like, it's your choice. But then social services was a little bit like, oh yeah, but you're probably not going to be able to keep it because situations, you're mentally not there. And again, I was a rebellious teenager. So I said to my mum, I said, I'm not mentally there for a child, like, I don't want it. So I went for an abortion. My mum was there, bless her, the whole way through. She was like my biggest support. And then it was like years later, weren't it? Then they said, oh, we found it at the bottom of the freezer. Yeah, we found it at the bottom of the freezer, your fetus. And I was like, what the hell? How can you just find it stuffed at the bottom of the freezer? And then, so after everything, they got the DNA off it and all that. After they did all that, they went to, they come to my mum's house and they said, oh, do you want a funeral?
How did you feel about what they'd done?
Very angry, weren't I? Very angry. So before they took the fetus, they should have had my consent. but they never. But then I think they did that because if they got my consent, I would have been like, okay, let's take this to trial, or they would have wanted them to pursue a prosecution, but they didn't. So because they didn't want to prosecute, they just was like, oh, we'll take it future, but we've got it anyway. We will ask you because then she's not going to ask about prosecution. Do you understand?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it must have felt like such a violation for them to have done that.
It's disgusting, to be honest. It's vile. That was a piece of me. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was a piece of me. That's like taking somebody's kidney without asking. It's vile. And they should never know nothing happened to the police officers either what robbed that.
And also, they've known what's going on and they've not done anything about it.
Well, because in the meetings, in the child protection meeting, there is a police officer present. So when I'm telling the social workers in the big meetings, the police officer sat there. A child protection police officer is sat there. So you can't tell me that he doesn't go back to his chief constable and say, okay, this is happening. You can't tell me he doesn't. They do. Or they would have written it down, or there would have been some paper trail there. But for some unknown reason, there wasn't, is it?
How many years does the abuse go on for?
So I was about 15 for me, like 2 to 3 years.
And how often was it? Was this kind of, how many times a week?
5.
5 times a week?
About 5, innit? About 5.
So nearly every single day?
Yeah.
Nearly every single day for 3 years?
Yeah. And you know, like when I turned my phone off, I turned my phone off, they'd come on my mum's street and wait. They'd just park.
So you couldn't escape them?
No. And they'd be like, why are you not answering your phone? I'd be like, my phone's off.
And why did it stop in the end?
I don't actually know. I think I was just like, you know what, it's done. Like, I found out that I don't know why it stopped. I don't know how I got out of it. I don't know how I just was like, you know what, this is it. But I did, didn't I? I don't know how though.
I mean, it's so much for the age of, from how young you were, for it to happen. I mean, it's horrendous if it happens once, let alone the amount that it did.
Yeah, it was a lot. But then but the reliving of it all in the video interviews was so traumatic, and there was no aftercare of that. And I feel like right now, if there is children or getting groomed, abused, raped, anything, I feel like straight after an interview, they should get immediately straight into a counsellor. Because it's so hard for me, anyway, personally, in my video interviews, I found it so triggering, so hard. I didn't react crying, I reacted angry. So if I had a counsellor or somebody just in the next room, so like if I felt triggered or sad or angry, I could just go in and vent and then go back into it, like take the time. But they didn't. It was literal no aftercare, no nothing. They'd just take me in the interview. I'd do the interview and they'd drop me off. And the only way I knew how to cope was get pissed, so I just got drunk.
You mentioned a couple of times about being rebellious. Were there times that the people that should have been protecting you were blaming you for what was going on?
Yeah, they'd say to like stuff like, well, just don't go out, don't do this, stay at home. Well, no teenager wants to stay at home. Nobody wants to stay at home. I shouldn't have to stay at home to feel safe. I should be able to walk down the street and feel safe. I was very open with it. Like from the offset, from when I first ever walked into the takeaway on that Friday night, I went to school Monday morning and told them. So like straight away from the first ever instance of meeting these men, I would walk into school on a Monday morning and tell them straight away.
Well, you tell your teachers on the Monday?
Yeah, on the Monday. Oh, I went to a takeaway, got free food last night. On the Monday.
And you told them that you'd been raped?
Yeah. We got vodka, we got free fags, we got vodka, we got all this. That was before the rape started, so like just as there was like grooming for that 1 week.
Yeah.
they knew that I was being groomed, but they didn't act. So then when I was acting out at school, they were saying to my mum, oh, she's kicked off, they was excluding me, and when I was excluded, I was out more. Like, it was just an ongoing cycle, but they never really seemed to want a break. So I'd kick off because I was feeling some type of way because I got raped the night before, I've had no sleep. And they didn't care. They'd be like, okay, you're excluded for the next 4 days. All right, well, I'm going to go out for the next 4 days then. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And so you met Maggie. What was your experiences with the police weren't great until you met Maggie, is that right?
Yeah, well, it still went great. It was only Maggie what was great.
Okay. Tell me about that. Go on.
When I first met Maggie, I didn't like her. Couldn't stand her. Didn't have no trust, no faith in the system. Into a broken system. It still broke. And that was it really. And then it just slowly started to gain trust and stuff like that. It was just slowly gaining in it, like. And then once I got a trust, that's when I agreed to do the video interviews and stuff. And that's when it all started, through the video interviews, the courts.
So you go to the police and you give them a long.
No, the police come to me.
Sorry, the police come to you and you give them a long list of names of all the.
Oh, I give them all names, addresses, phone numbers, places where to meet. I took them out to addresses to show them exactly where it was all happening. Told them the meeting spots. Told them where they meet, where they take you to rape you in the cars. I told them everything, and everything was written by the social worker, police officer from the crisis intervention team, who is a police officer, social worker. He wrote everything down, took everything, and then disappeared off the face of the earth, never to be seen or heard of again.
You were telling them the whole time.
Yeah.
So they knew, and obviously it's in your social records as well.
Yeah.
That it was all there. So then, all you were essentially having to do was repeat what they already knew, right?
Yeah.
And then they take some of the guys to court.
And I didn't find out until years later that he didn't even get charged with rape, even though they had DNA.
So you just get taken to court, or you get taken to give your video evidence.
It was through video.
Yeah, and they're just asking you about Billy.
Yeah, but they played the interview in court. And I was mouthing so as I was sat watching it, because the courts watch it and I watch it in the video room, and I was sat watching it and I was mouthing before I even said it, like what I was saying, because I knew what it was already. And then they were shouting abuse to me in the courts as well, and then nothing really happened about that. They just said, "Oh, say it again, you'll be took down."
The defendants were shouting.
Yeah, they were shouting abuse.
What were they saying?
They were calling me a slag. She's lying. The lying or something like that. There was loads of stuff what they were saying, and then they did calm down, and then we took a break, and then we come back, and then the judge was like, "Say it again, and you won't be in the court. You'll just have to go sit down in the cells." So they didn't say anything after that.
I mean, that was like they were trying to intimidate you before you were speaking. And what was it like giving that evidence?
It was scary. I'd never been in like a court like that, like that again before. I didn't really like it.
So the trial ends, and what did they say to you afterwards? So they've not really told you about any of the process.
No, so the trial ends. They dropped me off at home. Have a nice day.
That was it.
That was it.
At what point did you realise how big this whole Rochdale thing had become?
It was a few years later after the trial. And it just come then, and I was like, okay, this actually happened.
So, but did you not have a liaison officer or anyone that was supposed to?
No, because nobody really wanted to deal with the sent child. Like, nobody wanted to deal with me because I wasn't the victim.
But they were using you for evidence. They should
Yeah,
have
I know,
charged
but
you.
because I wasn't the victim they wanted me to be, and I would tell them, oh, I don't like that, and I don't like this, and I'm not telling you that. I don't want to keep going over the same questions because I wasn't the typical, oh my God, like I was raped, I'm going to cry all day kind of thing. They was uninterested.
So all the things which they claimed afterwards changed with your case weren't even true about it.
No. Nothing changed even after the court case. And they said, oh, it'll never happen again. How many trials have been since? Because it's happened again?
Well, one of the other things is like what we found was Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has stood up repeatedly and talked about your case, the file. He says, I took that file, I looked through the charging decisions, I said that this person should be charged, I oversaw all the decisions. And
But then you had DNA evidence and didn't even get it done for rape. Like, what do you mean? But even like after the courts, I was having threats. There was people chasing me through Rochdale town centre. There was people chasing me. I was walking home one day, and like a gang of Asian men pulled up at the side of me, started hurling abuse. Like, nothing changed. And the police just said, oh, we'll log it. When I rang them, we'll log it. What do you mean you'll log it?
I mean, it's extraordinary because at the same time as that's happening to you, again, the guy that's Prime Minister goes in front of like another bunch of politicians when he was still the top lawyer and says, this is such a success, we want to...
It's not a success though, is it? It's not a success. And I don't know anybody in who's been through what I've been through. I said it was a success. Nobody said that. He said that, but he didn't go for it. So why would he know? Like, everybody who I know who went through it, everybody said it was not a success. It was garbage. It was They just got it so they could write down, oh, we did what we needed to do. No, you didn't. You didn't do There was no aftercare for any of the girls. There was no support during the interviews. There was no support after, like, even before the interviews. Before the interview started, there should have been some support there. There was nothing. It was, okay, we want your interviews. That was it. And then after, they dropped me off at home, and that was it. Like, until they wanted me again. And I had to be available for them. They weren't ever, oh, you be available. Will you be available on this day? You will be available because I need you on this day. Do you know what I mean?
Did you feel like they just used you to paper over the cracks?
I feel like they took advantage a little bit of my needs and me. I feel like a lot of it was like, because as well they didn't take my additional needs into it. So like they were just treating me like any other person, but in reality I wasn't any other person. I have additional needs. So they should have treated me a little bit calmer than they would have with anybody else.
Well, but also, it's clear cut. You were a special needs child that was being abused, that was raped to where you were, made pregnant, and none of that really seems to have been recognised either by the authorities at the time or the courts when it got through there.
Well, yeah, so they just didn't care. They had no heart. It was literal, we're going to tick this box, and once we've ticked it, basically, and then they ticked the box, they did what they thought they needed to do, and was like, all right, bye then. Well, I didn't know that he was released, and I was in Asda with my sister and my niece, and I was walking up and down like the kids' pyjama section for pyjamas for my kids, and I've turned around and he was stood there and he followed me through the aisles, and I was like panicking because my niece was there. Well, she's only young, so but he had a child with him. I like a full child. Like, are you okay? But he wasn't allowed next to anybody when you get released anyway. He had a child on his own, but he was following me up and down the aisles. And I ran Maggie. And that was it, really, innit? That's all that happened. Like, nothing come of it. We got nothing. But he followed me, and it was like, are you okay mentally? Like, first of all, why are you with a child? Second of all, why are you trying to follow me? I locked myself in the changing rooms, having a complete panic attack. And I didn't even know he was released. I didn't know he was out. So that was traumatising.
And it's just horrendous that they failed you so many times. And then, like, even on the most basic thing of letting you know that he's come out of prison.
Yeah, just over 3 years he was out of prison.
What do you think of that as a sentence for what he did to you?
It's but it triggers me more that he didn't get done for rape. That hurts. But a lot of the men should have got done with rape. But him, we had DNA for him, and he didn't get done for rape. So what chance did I stand of charging any of the others when I didn't even get the right charge for the one we had DNA? I had no chance. There was no chance there of me getting that conviction for them other men, because the one they had the concrete evidence for didn't even get done for with rape.
And what do you think that the Prime Minister was the person he says personally he oversaw that decision?
It's disgusting, absolute vile. It's disgusting. And how can he stand there and say, okay, we did a good job, when you didn't do a good job though, did you? Because what chance did I stand against them men when the man, you had DNA evidence, it was concrete evidence, and you still didn't get charged him with rape?
Do you think we can trust him on any decision?
No, I don't. I can't trust that man. You can't trust any of the authorities at the moment. The police, like, they're sweeping so much under the carpet these days, it's unreal. Social services don't really do the jobs proper.
The Rochdale grooming gang scandal shook the nation, and rightly so. It exposed how victim blaming by authorities made those in power complicit in industrial-scale child abuse. We've now learned from whistleblowers and survivors that when police did belatedly bring a prosecution, it was filled with the same fundamental flaws that caused the scandal in the first place. Prosecutors perverted the evidence of a raped child to portray her as a paedophile, an act which was rightly described as a continuation of her abuse by an independent report. That disgrace was in addition to the reams of evidence they chose to ignore against many child rapists and the lesser offences they pursued against those that should have had the book thrown at them. Let us never forget that the CPS chose not to charge a predator with rape whose DNA was found on a frozen aborted fetus police took from a 13-year-old special needs child without her consent. But that's not even the most shocking part. What beggars belief is that the man who claims to have overseen these decisions, who says openly that he took the file on Rochdale and dealt with it personally, that man is our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. He's not hiding his involvement, he is brazen, and I'm afraid those meant to scrutinise this man, including the British media, have failed. We allowed Keir Starmer to present Rochdale as a success. We allowed him to use it to pave the way to become leader of the Labour Party and then Prime Minister of the country. The shame for us is that those disgraceful decisions around Rochdale were never a secret. They lay in plain sight all along and should have been exposed much, much earlier. You've been watching The Express Report. I'm Zak Garner-Purkis. Remember, when they told you real journalism died, they lied.